It's another exciting evening, Nigerians, and welcome to another exhilarating edition of your show, The New Deal, on this platform, the Obidient TV. This is where we have conversations as it affects a new Nigeria that we all look forward to. And I can tell you that the conversation that we have scheduled for this evening is such a very absorbing one. I've got great minds who have over the months, been helping to propagate the gospel according to Peter Obi Gregory's presidency, and they are here on the show tonight to make sure that we have the necessary flesh to the bare body of this discussion. My name is Waju Akin-Emmanuels. I'll be your host, and hopefully we have a very interesting one tonight. Let me, start by introducing my guests on tonight's edition of the New Deal. The honor of having a very, very sagacious man who has been able to cut his teeth in the oil and gas field. He goes by the name Brume Ikogho. I hope I'm right with that pronunciation. He's here.
You're right.
Brume, good evening to you.
Good evening, Waju. It's nice to be here.
It's such an honor to have you join us on today's show, Brume. Thank you for being here. But he didn't come here alone. He also came in with another beautiful individual. You know the way we do it in the Obidient movement. We are so privileged to have the best brains, the most beautiful minds, and the very gorgeous faces too. And tonight, one of such beautiful faces is here with us. Brume Obozuwa is on the show. Brume, good evening to you from there.
It's Preye.
Oh, sorry.
I can't be Brume, I'm a woman.
Sorry, darling. Sorry.
There's only one woman.
And the Brume is the guy.
Yeah.
Thank you for joining on this show, Preye.
Okay.
All right. So, like they say, I would like to start this conversation, with you because you are a lady, and I like to be a gentleman. So I think it's only commonsensical that I start that with you. But before we proceed, tonight's conversation is centered on Obidient's pact with Nigerians. So today we want to try our best to, as much as possible, dig up all of those little bits and pieces of the things that he encoded in that manifesto and see how what it offers Nigerians. So let's start from you. You have been able to take your time to study the manifesto. Would you say all of the things encoded in that manifesto are practicable in a country like ours?
Yes, they are. First and foremost, we know that Peter Obi, our principal, does not just put out things out there without proper research and a background to it. For most of us that are learned and exposed to a certain extent, we know the capacity and the capabilities of Nigerians. Also, studying the Nigerian terrain, the number of resources that we have, once you do a deep dive into that, you would know that it's a no-brainer. We have no business being the way we are now, and the manifesto is as a result of in-depth research into our system and the possibilities that can come out of our system. So yes, it's possible in Nigeria. I mean, this question, I like to put it out everywhere I go. Why do Nigerians thrive when you take them out of the rut in Nigeria and dump them in a very developed country? There are Nigerians who are pace setters everywhere in the world apart from their home country. They have opportunities that Nigeria has not been able to afford them. And you see them in positions of leadership in international organizations, in universities, places of academia, places of research. Even entertainment, Hollywood, Bollywood, it's crazy the extent to which Nigerians succeed. So when Peter Obi put this manifesto out, he did his homework, his background on Nigerians and Nigerian youth and their capabilities. So yes, it's doable. I've seen people in rural areas, videos have emerged of people in rural areas making use of basic science principles and creating things from the little they know because of how resilient Nigerians are, right? So it is possible if you know we have the labor force, over 200 million people. If you know the extent to which Nigerians are talented, for me, I know that the manifesto is the best I've seen so far, and I know we can even still do much more. So yes, I believe it's practical.
Okay, the underlying theme of that manifesto basically is actually consumption to, production, and then we'll be able to, whatever we produce, be able to actually export it out there and make the necessary foreign exchange so that we can actually build our economy. For you, let's look at critical sectors. I've highlighted in that manifesto, education, health, in agriculture, security, which seems to be the most, concerning, issue that most Nigerians are thinking of, at this particular point in time. Nearly every part of Nigeria is ravaged by one security challenge or the other. For you, do you think that the bit by bit analysis of what they claim they will do? I'm talking about Obi and Dati now, as a pair, and then the cabinet once it's actually constituted. Do you think that that would solve security challenges in Nigeria? That would also, meet our educational, target, because we definitely need to fix education. One of the major reasons where we are today is because educationally, particularly those that are in Nigeria, are not exposed to what I would call the 21st century tools of learning. So for you, would you say Obi and Daddy have done a good job to come up with a manifesto? And if you think they have, analyze it for laymen or people who have not been able to read the manifesto, to study the manifesto, the content that they will be able to grasp as Obi comes into power.
Okay. And is the question for me or Brume?
No, I want to do it Preye first, and Brume will also still respond to that, but I want to start from you. Yeah.
Okay, yes. Based on the basic needs of Nigerians, from education to security to having infrastructure, good public infrastructure to serve the people, it's definitely obvious that Peter Obi and Dati have done a good job at not just highlighting the problems, but bringing up practical solutions. I'd like to say this: Nigeria's problems are in a cycle. So if you don't educate people today, young people, the youth, let's say the teenagers, the adolescents, they grow up to be those citizens that cannot give back to society. We would not profit off of them. So it's a cyclical problem. If we do not secure our country, then we can't go about doing business. We can't go about building enterprise. We can't go about making innovations because of how insecure it is. Now let's take it back to poverty. The first thing on that line is poverty. If you don't solve the poverty issue, you have more people susceptible to crime. If you don't solve the poverty issue, you have more people dropping out of schools. If you don't solve the poverty issue, you have more people turning into different vices out of desperation. So when we can fix the poverty issue, what is poverty? Just making sure people can meet their basic needs. Then they can begin to think about how to give back to the society. Only a child who has eaten breakfast can go to school, concentrate, absorb knowledge, come back home and think, crack their head. I remember when we were kids, sometimes you come back from school after you've had your maybe siesta, your lunch at home and everything. We used to do crazy things like, build stuff, you build a car. It's only children that have been taught that, but we see more and more of kids, dropping out of school because of the poverty of their parents. But if we have a situation where public education is free, then we can now have those parents unburdened from the expense of school, and they can educate their children while they chase their business during the day. We'll see less of child labor and all that human trafficking and all child trafficking out the window. So it's cyclical, right? If we don't fix education, we don't fix security. Security is very, very important to in the facilitation of the movement of goods and services. If in Nigeria that is not safe, we cannot, exchange products across the different states or regions. So it's cyclical. Without fixing these basic things, we cannot move on to more, complex issues. And that is why he starts by saying, securing and uniting Nigerians. We must begin to educate people about their civic duty, how they are Nigerian first before their ethnic or religious affiliation, how they are, what their role is as citizens. They are not just there to consume, but they can give back. When everybody starts to think about how to give back, then we will have a better Nigeria. So you can see how they are all interrelated, and they must be addressed accordingly. And Peter Obi did not just prepare this manifesto alongside Dati, just in a random manner. Everything you see, every point noted there is according to their interrelationship. That's why as you progress, you see the importance of the previous, item, and it's pro. So you can see how progressive it is. Yes. So that's my own contribution.
Thank you. Thank you, Preye. I mean, good submission from you. Let's quickly, move over to the gentleman. I'm sure he's been waiting to, hear his opinion.
He's a walking encyclopedia. He's a walking encyclopedia.
Sorry, Brume, that I have to do that. I just wanted to be a gentleman, like they say, ladies first, and so that I would not be accused in the court of women that a woman came on the show and I didn't give her a due respect. That's the reason I did that. But let's come to you, Brume. Sorry, Brume. Good evening, Brume, once more.
Good evening, Waju.
Yeah, so good to have you on the show, and I like the fact that you showed your chivalrous, personality by not complaining while I was actually, having that conversation with Preye. It's good to know that we still have so many gentlemen in the world, and you are definitely one of them. So let's cut to the chase and talk about, education now. I would actually face education, and there's a reason for that. There are many statistics that back the fact that Nigerians at this particular point in time are not only unemployed, most of them are unemployable, because first and foremost, they don't have the choose. Can you hear me?
Very well, I can hear you.
Yes. They don't have the 21st century ideas, or they're not being taught, within the university system with all the tools that are being used in advanced countries to actually pass across all of this, what you could call knowledge. Now, I went to a public university, but even where I had outcasts as classmates, and that was in the early 90s. I mean, and the school I went to wasn't really a very, very big school. Like, yeah, it was big school, government college, but it wasn't as if it was out of this world. But education then was as bad as it was in the 90s. It was something I would give up my life for these kids now to experience. Yeah. So tell me something. The way Obi and Dati have crafted their policy in terms of education. Are we going back to the glory days? Is that possible? Are we going to see that recreated if they eventually become the president or the vice president of this nation?
Okay. So from what we see in the manifesto, right? Because Obi and Dati, they approach issues based on global statistics, right? And it's interesting to note that he has put the KPIs that we're going to use to measure his success in the future, right? So, for example, in talking about education, right, he mentions that Nigeria ranks 168 out of 173 countries when it comes to Human Capital Development Index. Okay. Now, he says that they're going to pursue a Marshall-type educational plan, right? And so he's not talking about masters, PhDs, and outlandish things. No, he's gone back to the basics and said, look, right, that plan incorporates compulsory technical and vocational skills. Okay. Remember, Peter Obi has lived abroad before, right? And here, right, I have an engineering degree. I have, all this experience, right? Well, my next door neighbor is a plumber. This guy installs fiber optics for the telecoms company. The other one is an electrician, right? Nobody looks down on vocations over here. Yes, this is one of the things that we need to go back to, because not everybody needs to be university educated, right? There's a huge technical gap in Nigeria that needs to be fixed. That's the reason why oil and gas companies have expatriates that come to paint because our guys are unable to paint, not just paint, right? There, there's a way you paint, metals that are exposed to corrosion, right? And we just don't have anybody that teaches these things. Underwater welding, so many things that pay very high that Nigerians have missed out on in the midst of a lot of expatriates performing these things in Nigeria, right? So yeah, so his educational plan is all encompassing, right? So vocational skills, sports, entrepreneurship, programming, computer skills from the primary to the secondary level. Okay, now in line with this commitment, they have said they will fund this critical sector. Okay, now our tertiary institutions will be remodeled to serve as, hubs, centers of research, right? And why is this important, right? When you read articles online, you hear that students from MIT in conjunction with NASA have discovered some new robotic technology, right? You hear that students in the University of Colorado, in conjunction with ExxonMobil have discovered something, right? The problem in Nigeria is, there is very limited partnership between the tertiary institutions, right, and the real sector, right? The schools are places where students come to read, pass exams, and then go out and join the labor force, right? And it's not supposed to be so. Research should be funded by the private sector, right, in conjunction with the universities to make discoveries, right, to better our lives, right? So, the reason why we don't do this is just lack of funding, right? Professors need money, right? The private sector needs to have confidence in the fact that if they fund research in the schools, right, that the results that they get are representative of, the hard work of the students and not just some academic papers written for the fun of it, right? So, in line with this plan, we're going to have universities doing what they're supposed to do. We're going to have people learning technical skills and realizing that, hey, I can contribute to society without being a master's degree holder or a PhD degree holder. If I can drive my car to a mechanic workshop and be confident that the person who is working on my car knows what he's doing, I'll be willing to pay him, right? And so if we tackle education from this rounded point of view, then the money that we say is only circulating amongst a few people, the politicians and the really high earning people who import a lot of things, right? The money begins to flow down to all sectors of the economy, right? So, so I strongly believe that the plan by Peter Obi and Yusuf Datti is realistic. It can be realized. And if you look at the background of these two men, right? Starting from the vice president, he owns a university, right? He understands the importance of education. He's highly educated, right? Peter Obi is also very highly educated, right? Now, forget about the naysayers that keep talking about the fact that, he doesn't have, as many degrees as people, right? I have a very good friend here who says that education is different from vocation, okay? Many people go to school to get an education, but majority just go to learn a vocation, right? So it's very important that, we look at the life experiences, the stories of these people from where they started, what they have been through, what they have done, and then judge them, right? The final reason why I believe the manifesto is the sincerity of Peter Obi and Yusuf Datti. I look at them, they are very relatable, they are very sincere. We can see the passion, with which they speak. We can see the amount of work that they have done, traveling around the country and the diaspora as well, talking and engaging Nigerians, So that sincerity of purpose that I see, right? When I read the document, I feel like this is Mr. Peter Obi speaking to me, and I strongly, strongly believe, right, that that this educational policy is realizable, right? Just to point out one or two things, right? For me, when we think about primary education, okay, I remember my teachers, the standard that they were, and I see teachers of today, a lot of them who cannot speak a sentence in correct English, right? I think that as a primary 5 student, I could speak more correctly than a lot of the teachers that we have today, simply because of the standard of people that were in education then. But because of the falling standard, right? The standard of the teachers is low. Remember what happened in Edo Stephen Oshomole was governor when he told them to come and write exams again, right? The standard has been so lowered that the education our children are getting right now, for me, cannot be termed an education. They cannot hold a conversation with their counterparts in other parts of the world, right? So Peter Obi says that, the first step will be to retrain, retool, and recertify teachers, okay? And incentivize industry experts to take up teaching roles in partnership with universities. Those two steps alone, right, already raise the standard of what our students are going to be hearing in school. Maybe not in the first year. It's going to take time, right? But, that's the thing, right? We can't always be instantly gratified, right? We need to look at the long term, not just short term. So we don't expect that 100 days after Peter Obi wins the election, all teachers will be retrained and retooled. It's going to take time, and we have to be patient. Thank you.
Thank you, Brume. You made a very, very, very beautiful submission that I just couldn't agree with you more. When you said that Obi, in his manifesto, will probably find a way of integrating folks that have become giants in their chosen professions come and teach. I mean, it will be something good. Imagine someone like Dangote coming to teach about business in Nigeria, in Nigerian university.
Yeah.
This is a hands-on professional, somebody that has done it. I mean, been able to make wealth, from everything you ever touched. And guess what? When such a person comes to the university system and comes to transfer his knowledge to you, that's not what you can easily come by, in terms of experience. So beautiful one from you. And just like you said, you were trying to talk about your understanding of education. One, I want to define education as a consistent and a conscious development of the mind, an exposure of the mind to learning that you will use for your own development and the betterment of the society. Now, it doesn't necessarily have to be what we get within the confines of the university, and that's exactly what you captured. But let's look at some other critical parts of this discussion as it affects education. Since 1999, Nigeria has never budgeted up until 20% of our budget to education. And we're not likely to bet a thriving nation if you can't even give 20% of your budget to your education. I mean, this particular done worse. When they came in 2015, it was less than 9%. I'm sure the very best we ever did in Nigeria was around 15%. So you are abroad. You have been to countries, to climes where things are working, where educationally they seem to be flying. And Brume, this is still for you. Realistically, with our dwindling economic fortune, we can raise our educational sector, especially as it affects also the budgetary allocation to that particular sector. Did you get the question? Was it clear?
Yes. So you're talking about raising our educational budget, right?
Yeah.
So before talking about the budget, right? One of the things that Peter Obi has said, right? I'm sure you've heard before the manifesto even came out, right? He made it clear that good education doesn't come cheap. Okay. That's the reason why, today the funding structure of the universities is unsustainable. We've seen, all of the strikes that ASU has embarked on, right? They're not just clamoring for nothing, right? Education is poorly funded in Nigeria, okay? So one of the things Peter Obi said he would do, okay, is to address the gaps in legislation, right? Guiding access of funding to UBE, okay, and the TED fund, okay. There are bottlenecks that that prevent flexibility and access to funds required to meet the educational needs of Nigerian students, okay. Now, so one thing he has said is that he will initiate, in conjunction with the Ministry of Education, right, a PPP, a public-private partnership. Yes, right, which involves private corporations, right? And this is important because if private corporations can fund shows like Big Brother and The Voice Nigeria, right, that promotes, of course, the talent of Nigerians, right, then I'm sure we can also direct some, right, who have like a different philosophy, right, to fund education, right, because they have an indirect benefit from that, okay? So he has mentioned legislation targeting UBEC, TED Fund, PPPs between Ministry of Education and the private sector.
Yeah,
exactly, right. So that is going to reduce the burden of government, right, and ensure that education at least begins to regain the quality it once had in the past, right. Talking about the budget, okay. Honestly speaking, our debt to revenue ratio now is so high that any government that comes and says they're going to increase the budget now, right, probably would face some issues when it comes to implementation, okay? You can see 2023 budget has no capital expenditure. So we are doomed to live in poverty for the rest of the year because there is nothing a government is spending money on to generate more money, okay? So, yeah, so I know Mr. Peter Obi, is a very good manager, right? He's financially frugal, and, if he has to increase the educational budget, right, he'll do it within the limits that, availability of funds will allow, right? But I like his model of pursuing education from a legislative, right, and a public-private partnership model, right? For me, that works, right? Something that they might have to do at the end of the day will be to review the fee structure of all the universities, right? Simply because, we don't want to overburden Nigerians who are already suffering so much. But at some point, this is something that might have to be done, right? Just to make sure that the universities generate enough funds, right, internally, okay? So yeah, that's it for now, right? I don't know if they can successfully increase the budget to UN and other recommendations, but there are things that he can do as outlined in the manifesto that can increase the quality of education.
Thank you, Brume Ikogho. And guys, we're still on the New Deal. Tonight's discussion is centered on the Obidient manifesto, which they have very, very wisely crafted as our factory Nigerians. And I'm honored to, play host to two great individuals, Brume Ikogho, who is actually an oil and gas professional, and the beautiful Preye Obozuwa, who is also a clinical research professional. Both of them are actually our friends, and they've been doing a great deal of job in analyzing some of the questions we've actually thrown at them. But at this juncture, we'll take a break. When I come back, my co-host, Stephanie Odia, will be joining me, and then the conversation will just go into another level. I can't wait for you guys to listen to Steph because she's got some fire to actually supply into the conversation this evening. After now, Steph will be the one to talk. Thank you, guys. It's still the New Deal. Welcome back, people. Steph, if you're there, good evening to you, darling. How are you today? Stephanie, are you there?
Hi, Waju. I am here. Okay, ready for you.
Yeah, it's such an honor to have you join me. I thought probably you were going to just bail on me tonight. I was about crying. Why would you do that to me? But so good to see your beautiful face. Welcome there. How are you?
Very well, thank you. It's good to be here. Good evening, Nigerians, and thank you so much for joining us on the New Deal. Of course, I am here side by side with my co-host, and very good evening to both of our guests. Glad to have you here with us.
Good evening, Steph.
Good evening, Stephanie. Nice to meet you.
Good evening, Brume. I've listened to the both of you speak, and we're talking about the incoming His Excellency Peter Obi's manifesto. And I did see something, you know, I of course, before we went on that break, Brume was talking about education, and there are several other points on this manifesto. If you ask me, personal opinion, it's really rich. And as a matter of fact, I mean, all of these things are, I would want to say, but a dream until they're achieved. Right? I stand to be corrected. So now let's look a bit at what he talked about regarding, you know, having visas and having Nigerians being able to access countries all over the world. We know right now, I mean, our reputation is almost damned. It's almost doomed. I mean, whenever you see the green passport, people do not even acknowledge it anymore. People don't respect it. We did hear about situations whereby Nigerians were even forced out of Ghana. This was last year. It's horrible. So now let's look at Peter Obi coming into power by God's grace if he wins the elections. And let's look at what he's talked about, you know, restoring our reputation as Nigerians. How attainable, how achievable is this? This is something that can be done within a short space of time. We've seen how the rest of African countries are reacting, you know, towards the coming elections. We've seen body languages. The incumbent president welcomed the president of Comoros today, and people were like, okay, this is looking hopeful. Body language is given, okay, once you're done, we want to see who's coming in next so we can work with them. So how attainable is this? Is this something that PO can achieve as fast as we're expecting? Is this something that is doable? Because it takes a lot of time to really build reputation. I hope we're aware of this.
I strongly believe it's possible. We have countries that have done it. I like to make reference to countries that are similar to Nigeria, not just the Western countries, but countries that used to be third world, maybe ravaged by war and poverty, who have been able to revive themselves. Let's take Rwanda as a case in point, right? Rwanda, we all know Rwanda recovered from one of the worst genocides in the history of the world. Rwanda now today has a budding economy, has industries, because the president or the prime minister has been able to prioritize education and, you know, improve the HDI of his people. Foreign investors are trooping into Rwanda because of the tourism they have now and investing in Rwanda. So that is one example. Or when we talk about how Nigeria has a certain type of makeup where we're ethnically diverse and we all have religious variations, right? Singapore has done it as well. You understand? Now, Singapore is one of the most prominent countries when it comes to supply chain for the entire world. So these things are possible. Nigeria, first and foremost, we're the most populous Black nation. We're talking about over 200 million people, with over 60% of our population being employable when you talk about employment age, right? So we have the labor, we have the resources, we have natural resources, unthinkable number of natural resources that you see international communities are beginning to face Nigeria. And the international interest in Nigeria is because of the economic benefits, number one. And number two, the world is not ready for a refugee crisis from Nigeria. They are already feeling the pressure of, you know, people jackpotting and leaving Nigeria and coming to stay in their countries. But the good thing is, I know our reputation is bad. Our passport has been ranked lowly recently, but we must remember something. These countries have not closed their doors, and that will circle back to what I said initially. As much as Nigerians have a bad reputation and have, you know, people wondering what's going on with our country, Nigerians outside of Nigeria thrive. So the international community is aware about how talented, gifted, how, you know, how they're very. Let me give you an instance. For Pfizer and the COVID-19 vaccine, the person that was in charge of the team that led the research for the discovery of that pioneer vaccine was a Yoruba man. People don't know this, and I'll circle back to what Brume said again. Research. We have companies willing to pump, clinical research, And people keep saying the same thing. I've had conversations with, people in executive positions in clinical research, and they will tell you only if countries like Nigeria can get things like their security, their regulation right. Clinical research alone, the sponsors in clinical research, those big pharmaceutical companies alone pumped in about $1.5 trillion just in drug discovery. And imagine if we had the regulation and the system, to accommodate that, then we'll have that kind of injection into our economy. So you see, there's a part of Peter Obi's manifesto that says leapfrogging Nigeria from oil dependency to the fourth industrial revolution. There are many sectors, as Brume mentioned earlier, that pay. There are many sectors that are budding in the world today. So nobody depends on oil, not even Dubai, not even Qatar, the big oil companies, not even Russia, not even Russia, because of how the world is evolving via tech, artificial intelligence, emerging sectors. Peter Obi has hounded and spoken over and over again about emerging sectors like mine in Africa. Clinical research is emerging. South Africa is picking up on it. Countries and companies are pumping into research in universities in Cape Town, Johannesburg, just to get it right. Because when it comes to wellness and big pharma, drugs, interventions, treatments, therapies, they don't just want to research using a certain race. Every company, every government is aware that research should cut across. So these are the things Nigerians are missing out because we're not getting the basics right. But that's why Peter Obi continues to address the basics while telling us we need to leapfrog from here to here. And that is how our reputation will grow. This particular election has the international community's interest because we know how governments of different countries have been winning our tech graduates out of Nigeria because of how good they are. So they know we have it. That's why they have that certain attention. And then there's, of course, the economic interest they have, with investing in Nigeria. It's possible. As badly as our passport is ranked and how poor our reputation is, we still see that these countries have not closed their doors on Nigeria because of the potential that we have. And the manifesto also addresses using foreign policy to restore our strategic position globally. So these things is going to start with proper international relations, that cuts across the board, different countries, and not just countries, but, communities and organizations that are big players when it comes to human development and the likes of that. And then also research, a lot of research, going into it and paving the way for more injections. Because Tesla, case in point, has an interest in investing in Nigeria because of the amount of lithium that has been discovered. But then again, they have concerns. Right. So you see how much we're missing out here, right? They have concerns, the safety of their staff. They have concerns about, if they will be able to succeed because of the terrain. People are ready to work with Nigeria, and that is why we have that attention. I know we can do it, and I know Peter Obi and that can do it because they have identified the problem and they are not in denial about it. Like these status quo politicians have been in denial because it doesn't suit them. They're in their bubble. Maybe they've made money or they've embezzled enough money for their generation, so they continue to remain in that bubble. But we have Peter Obi and Yusuf Dati that have identified these things, and only by identifying problems can you solve them. Hence why we have this type of manifesto we have today.
Thank you so much, Preye. Brume, I'm going to let you chip in a bit, then we move on to my next question. Go ahead, Brume, since you have something to say.
Yeah, Preye has covered a lot, right? By the way, Preye is the president of our debate group, so Preye speaks for all of us. Anyway, but I'm going to approach the topic from the people. Okay, we are in support of Mr. Peter Obi. That's very clear, and I must say that the other candidates are very uninspiring. We have one who we think who says is 70 Some say he's 80 or 85. We are not sure. The other one is 75 years old. The average age of Nigeria is 18. We are looking for a change in generational leadership, okay? We still have people who were born way before Nigeria's independence, still contesting today. The world has moved, right? I'm not saying that other countries don't have old candidates. They do. But a younger, more vibrant person who is more in touch with today's realities, right, will play a key role in lifting, the perception burden that Nigeria has today, right? Like Preye mentioned, everybody is watching the election. I go on Instagram and I see people, Americans all over the place, right, talking about Nigeria, people calling themselves Obidient because they're watching this election. Nigeria is a very popular country. People want to come here. Black people want to come and see, how slaves were treated in Badagry, right? People that have listened to Nigerian music, Burna Boy, Thames, and the likes, want to come to Nigeria, but they cannot. So for them, they want the country to change so they can come back. Now, looking at Mr. Peter Obi and Mr. Yusuf Dati, you never hear them say negative words about Nigeria, okay? What you say about your people is important. Why do you think all over the world we hear about Nigerian scammer? Meanwhile, we know that in countries like India, right, they have a whole workforce dedicated to defrauding people in Australia, the UK, and the US. But we don't hear public proclamations of Indians as scammers, right? We know them as people who have excelled in the tech industry. That's what we know them as, right? The proportion of global scammers that are Nigerians, I don't think we're up to 20%. So the term Nigerian scammer comes from the fact that the people who are supposed to be the stewards of the Nigerian ship allow negative perceptions to persist. Our president called us lazy Nigerian youth. We all know that's far from the truth. Most Nigerian youth are self-made. The government has given nothing to them, okay? We've had incidents in other countries, right, where Nigerians were caught in trafficking drugs, right? And the chairman of the Nigerians in Diaspora Commission has not made any statement to defend them and say, hey, innocent of the proven guilty. No, she comes and makes statements that say, hey, you shouldn't have done that. We've had incidents where Nigerians were maltreated in other countries and nobody stood up for them, right? So people see these things and they wonder, if a country can treat its people like this, why should we treat them any better?
Yeah.
Okay, so my approach to this, right, is people, okay? We need people, right, that will restore the confidence and hope in both Nigerians in Nigeria and Nigerians abroad. Talking about the foreign policy Preye mentioned, right? In the manifesto, Mr. Peter Obi says that, yes, even though he's going to have a robust foreign policy, right? But the priority will be on making sure that Nigerians at home and Nigerians abroad are treated with dignity, okay? He's not referring to the Nigerians like myself and Preye who are doing very well in this country. We don't have problems. He's talking about those Nigerians that are treated badly when they travel to other countries, in the Middle East, in Asia, in the UK, in US, simply because we're Nigerians and they know that we don't have a voice, right? Finally, right, before I conclude, I want to say in the manifesto, Peter Obi says he will address multidimensional poverty. If Nigerians are prosperous and doing well, first of all, we're not going to be looking to go outside. People are going to be looking to come to Nigeria to benefit from the prosperity, or just to come around and enjoy another part of Africa that they have been shielded from over the past, I don't know how many years, because of insecurity and the instability that exists in the country, okay? So Nigeria right now needs to change the people who are leading the country. We change the people, put competent people there, who will look for other competent people that can come and fix the problems, and then we can start on the course to change. If we don't change the people, then I'm sorry, nothing is going to happen, okay? So changing the people alone already gives us a few points, you know, a small boost to our reputation, because people will be like, okay, these guys have woken up, they've elected the right people, Let's see what the right people will do. And I tell you, attitudes will begin to change in the same way that in 2015, when Buhari first became the president, attitudes changed for a short while until they realized, oh, it's business as usual. Okay, they're back to their normal selves. Okay, let's respect them how we respected them before. Okay, so that's it for me.